You're listening to the Jay Bird Watching Podcast, the official podcast of jaysjournal.com and fansided.com, where we discuss all things Toronto Blue Jays baseball. We'll talk about news, rumors, and game recaps. So whether you're a diehard fan or just getting started with the team, this is the podcast for you. Here is your host, Craig Borden, with co-hosts Jason Lyons and me, Ken Alfred. You're listening to the Jay Bird Watching Podcast.
Good evening, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to Jay Bird Watching. I am your host, Craig Borden, here with my new gang of cohorts. I have Ken Alfred with me, along with Jason Lyons. How are we all doing this evening?
Doing good, man. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
Really good, really good. You know, another week more. The baseball gods seem to be feeding us at every turn with new delicious morsels of ideas and trades and
delicious morsels or
delicious
teases?
Morsels. That's
yeah,
gonna be...
and Japanese superstars, and just it's awesome. It's a great off season if you're gonna have an off season to talk baseball.
Yeah, and to that point, there is plenty to dive in and talk to this evening. I just wanted to, mention this whole fact that I am 6 degrees from Buffalo, New York, and it has been green and grassy here. I know if anybody's been reading the national news, but there is 6 feet of snow, not even an hour west of me.
Wow.
And there is no snow here in Rochester, New York.
Crazy.
It is literally the first time in my full tenure of living on this planet that it has not happened like that. It's usually if they get 6 feet of snow, we get 3 feet at a minimum. Wow. It's only
crazy.
45 minutes to an hour.
I was going to ask you about this.
I could show you right now. It's beautiful, nice and green outside. Well, mud because it's my backyard. It's been raining a little bit. So I really don't get it. Mother Nature's a fickle wonder.
Yeah.
So, but to that point, as far as fun goes, guys, why don't we talk about the first topic? And that is the renovations are go. We're at the next level almost.
Yeah.
So
now, as you guys probably, have probably figured out, I work for a large renovation home building company. So whenever we're going to talk renovations, I get a little bit more excited. So glad to see the renos started. I'm glad to see that. I've taken a look at the plan a couple of different times. I think it creates a couple of really interesting seating situations and some coolness that I feel like some of the stadiums unfortunately lack. But awesome to see it started, and it's always nice to see a promise followed through on in any regard when it comes to professional sports.
I think that's the key there, is we're actually getting something new. They said this is the biggest renovation that they've had since the actual inception of the Sky Dome. So this is a big undertaking, and I don't know if anybody's seen the video that happens to be floating around on social media or not, but they've already taken a good couple big chunks out of the outfield wall where they're going to start building these club levels and things like that for the outfield. It is very intriguing, and everything we've seen, it's going to look like a real ballpark, I think, at the end of the day. Yep. Not that it was bad to begin with beforehand. No. That is still one of my favorite ballparks.
Retractable roof. Remember a retractable roof? That used to be the big selling feature of the Sky Dome.
Yeah. So, and it is still the most unique, I think, retractable roof I've ever seen. Because if you look at the brand new ballpark that they built down in Texas for the Rangers, it literally looks like a grill top to me, and it just goes shink. That's all it does.
Have you ever seen the one in Seattle?
The one in Seattle is pretty clever, at least.
Yeah, it's really neat, and it does take quite a while to they have to decide to close it. I think 2 hours before game time. But yeah, I mean, I've been in it closed and open. It's a great stadium. I love the look of it. Like when you're driving by it on the highway, it looks really neat it's got the big open girders that roll the roof rolls on. So it's kind of a neat thing. So yeah.
Ken, you've seen pictures of the new renovations and everything that's going on. Obviously it's a means to an end to keep, this a functional fan experience for, until they finally do figure out what's going on for the, Blue Jays downtown or not downtown area ballpark. Give us your thoughts. Give us the rundown.
No, I was watching the video and it looks amazing. I love the renderings right near the end where it kind of shows what it's going to look like. So I'm very excited to see it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, we're just changing the seating. We're not doing anything to the actual dimensions of the field, right? The field's still going to remain the same. It's just the seating is just going to be laid out a little bit differently.
Correct me if I'm wrong. They're going to do that eventually, but I believe that this part of the offseason was literally this part of the renovation was all fan base. So it's all the areas that they're going to be getting for these club levels and things like that. I believe going into the following season, to start 2024, they're going to have those raised bullpens all done, that little bit of a change to the outfield wall configuration. I don't know if they were doing the wall or not this year, but they did specifically mention the bullpens being raised up to be that fan experience right there instead of them being sunken in and entrenched like they are currently. That's going to happen next off season.
So this is not even done yet. So this is just like phase one.
Doing it like phase 1, phase 2.
Wow. Do we have a price tag on that? How much?
Don't ask.
$11 billion.
11 billion.
11T.
Don't ask. No, you probably don't. It's actually the full reno is $300 million.
Yeah.
So
somebody's getting in there on that.
Yeah.
Who's got their recorder back open again? So
yeah. Now that I'm looking, like I looked at it a little earlier, but the $300 million, that's a decent chunk of change.
Yeah, exactly. Decent chunk of change to the point where, like I said, this isn't just a short term. This is they're fixing this up for the next 10 years of baseball.
Yeah,
you would think in this renovation. And honestly, I hope that in the midst of them doing all this renovations, the next piece to this whole thing to me is they do all this work to show that they're doing all this cool stuff for the fan experience. And then they're going to hopefully get another damn all-star game for the Blue Jays fans to have in Toronto.
I think that's what they're trying to do, or they're really positioning themselves into that, right? Because you're going to spend all this money, you got to pretty it up. I mean, how do they determine who actually gets the All-Star game? Like, is it
usually it's whoever has the new stadium?
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say.
Doing it. Yeah.
So, but I don't know what's going on that whole level for that. The Blue Jays fans are going to get something better out of that whole experience. The last big All-Star game for something like in the Blue Jays situation, it's had to have been the Kansas City Royals when they did all their massive renovations to Kauffman Stadium and redid the water park, or not, the water fountain configurations and that whole fan experience out on the outfield. And then they got the All-Star game 2 years after that. So I would think that means good things for Blue Jays fans.
I agree.
Yeah. So where's the All-Star game next year? Are they made in
Seattle?
Yeah.
So good times. So hopefully that's coming in the Blue Jays future. But anyway, before we keep talking on nothing but, things like that, I will give you a 50-50 if this is a good thing for Blue Jays fans or not over the last week. But unfortunately, guys, we said bye-bye to Mr. Seeds, as in Teoscar Hernandez. So for all of you that didn't know that nickname, that's what he always wore on his uniform for the Players' Day.
Yep.
When they are allowed to put whatever name they want on their nameplate for their jerseys, it was always Mr. Seeds. And if you watched him do any kind of home run dance celebration with anybody ever, it's pounds of seeds poured over somebody's heads.
Yeah.
So hence Teoscar is Mr. Seeds. It did hurt to see him in the too early rendering of his Seattle Mariners jersey online the other day. I was like, oh, that was one of my boys. I really liked watching him. He was always having a great damn time playing the game of baseball. And he came up with some really, especially this last year, came up with some big clutch hits for the Blue Jays. So that is one they're going to feel.
He's always been a very, very, very solid bat. My knock on him has been his fielding. He's an unreliable fielder, and in some cases, looks like he looks disinterested out there, or else that he just doesn't read balls well. Like
something's missed.
He seems to get a late break a lot. Sometimes he makes a beautiful catch. Other times, it lands 6 feet away from him, and you're having played the game, you're kind of questioning how somebody could be that far off when they have played their whole career and they played in the outfield their whole career. But I think that Teo had a good run in Toronto. I feel like he'll probably help Seattle out. Seattle, I don't know if you guys have seen that weird thing where like 10 years ago, a guy predicted the next like 15 World Series champions, and he's been right. He's been dead right, even up to this year, picking the Astros, and he's got the Mariners picked for next year.
Really?
How many beers do we have to send that guy to get to the top of that list?
I mean, it's bizarro. Well, he did it like 10 years ago. Like, it's crazy.
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
I think a safe bet 10 years ago that the Blue Jays weren't going to be in that when you're looking at mid-Angry Bird era in that midst of that situation.
So, but, I think that one of the big things, and I know we're going to discuss this, probably at length today, is, it does free up some space in the outfield. And we were talking about sort of, where are we weakest? And I think that it's, it was middle relief, and we got good players back. Anytime you can get a Canadian, well, I guess he's Canadian-ish,
Quasi-Canadian, like
Quasi-Canadian.
And a guy who's had who had a pretty good year last year. He's had some hiccups in the past, but had a really good year last year.
Yep.
It looks to me like a very good trade for the Jays. And here's to hoping that down the road it doesn't prove to bite us. But you got to throw it. You got to throw it into the wind with sometimes, and hope what you're pushing for is equaled on the field.
Yeah. And on that note, so basically the main trade in summary, I forget the gentleman, and I know you guys just said it to me, so that's just how horrible I am. So it's Eric Swanson and
Adam Macko.
There it is, in unison. See, you guys are both better than me. What am I hosting? So Eric Macko comes back, and mind you, he was a top prospect in the Seattle Mariners organization. He actually is literally being penciled into most preliminary 30-man prospect rosters for the Toronto Blue Jays in the 8 and 9 range. So he is automatically one of the best prospects in the Blue Jays minor league system post this trade. And then Eric Swanson is as Jason was just alluding to, somebody that has some very crazy swing and miss stuff, and something that the Blue Jays were missing in their bullpen. I was reading some stat that he actually literally struck out 37% of the batters he faced this season.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Who does that?
Do you guys know what he makes? Do you know what his salary is?
Is it like 1 point something?
Yeah, 1.4.
Yeah. And to that point, that's how relievers usually get paid, unfortunately. They're not making bajillions of dollars unless you are somebody like Craig Kimbrell or the crazy elite closer. You're not making it. You're not making marquee level money, good money, but maybe you're not using.
I'll take it. Yeah,
exactly. So and not to mention you get to go out and play baseball all day.
Yeah, we went to a Canadians game at the end of the year, and Macko pitched. So I've actually seen him. And they kind of made a big deal of it. They put up, that he was from Stony Plain and blah, blah, blah. And so it's kind of neat. He throws the ball incredibly hard. He needs a little fine tuning, but he has a deadly strong arm. And I'm going to be very interested to see, sort of what training camp bears out for him.
Yeah, and to that point, I think he actually made it all the way through Double-A last year in the Mariners. So he's positioned really well to probably even start with the lack of bullpen depth the Blue Jays have through their minor league system in Buffalo this year after that spring training invite. And guys like him and Yasver Zulueta are going to be the next in line to possibly take that job and run with it. So very intriguing to be able to, and then you get the guy like Eric Swanson that we had already went and mentioned that has crazy miss stuff out of the bullpen. Ken, we saw at the end of last season that not having that guy that could really just go out there and throw bullets and watch batters miss it. And I'm not trying to call out guys here, but for example, the fact that Adam Simber gave up a couple of key little squib hits in those couple of games at the end. And David Phelps kind of did the same thing. Those guys that are good relievers, but they don't have that ability to miss bats. Do you think having somebody like Eric Swanson at the end of the day is possibly the thing this bullpen was missing?
Yeah, I definitely think so, just because of the fact that he brings some more depth to the team, right? I think the fact that he strikes out a lot of batters, it's easier for the defense if the pitcher's striking everybody out, right? I mean, that's what it is. It could almost be like, if you remember the Dwayne Ward, Tom Henke combination, the setup and the closer kind of thing, maybe he can provide that kind of value to the team, right? So especially if it's a very tight game, we're maybe up by 1 or 2 runs, maybe throw in Swanson in there just to see if we can wave off a few of those batters, set him up for Romano to close it off. So I think, he's a welcome addition, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he performs.
I think that's exactly it right now. It's we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago that maybe the bullpen is obviously a need if we can get the right pieces to it. The outfield had that there's got to be something we could tinker around here and play with to maybe get better defense out of it, because we were just crushing offense with it, with a hurt George Springer even. I think now this eases things up from the Teoscar, and I will be the first to admit I didn't see them trading Teoscar Hernandez. In hindsight, this makes more sense because, guys, he was on paper probably to make somewhere in the $16 million ballpark through arbitration this season, because he made 14 this last one.
Yeah.
So he also had another good year. Yeah. Not the best of seasons, but definitely in the right direction for him to be able to get a guaranteed raise out of arbitration. So he was probably heading in that direction. Fine. Let the Mariners slip that bill. We turn around and try to find somebody that hopefully can be an actual everyday center fielder and move George Springer maybe back to right field and give him some better legs to go through a whole season. It is saying something to be able to play center field all day, every day at the major league level, boys.
100%.
Do you guys agree with me that getting him out of center fielder might actually help that the rest of that tenure he has with the Toronto Blue Jays? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 5 more years.
Yeah, it's a must do. Like, you have got to get Springer into a place where he's not putting his body on the line as much as he is putting his body on the line. Left and right field, you definitely don't get, the kind of depth balls hit to you that you have to be. I mean, Springer's fast enough to get there, but if he's playing left or right, he's running to those balls and catching them while he's still on his feet. I've taken a look around. I mean, there's a lot of good options out there. I feel like we're kind of down to like Brandon Nimmo and maybe Cody Bellinger. I mean, I know that the Giants seem to be going insane and just, everybody's flying to San Francisco to meet with the Giants. Like, if they get everybody they're looking at, the Giants will be quite a team. After reading that Aaron Judge said it was the best meeting he'd had so far, which is...
On that note, I don't remember if you all remember all last offseason, but famous Twitter host, baseball player, Marcus Stroman, signed a contract with the Cubs, and then about 2 weeks into spring training goes, yeah, I done screwed up. I should have signed with the Giants. Not even kidding. Literally an interview, and then tweeted it out after. It was 2 separate conversations. How mean is that? So to that point, there's something cooking there in San Francisco. So
yeah, I don't know if they've just got I went and looked at their lineup. I mean, they still have a full lineup. It's the same, the Dodgers have kind of liquidated, and they've moved away from a bunch of their key guys that have gotten them sort of through the last 5-6 years. So, yeah. I mean, the Dodgers have probably more money than anyone to work with, but, I think that the Giants have the coach that they want. I feel like they've got the pitching rotation that they want. They just have to now start putting some of the pieces around that. And I think that's where maybe Nimmo becomes unattainable, because maybe they can throw a little more money at him. But, I think that Bellinger's he's an excellent fielding, center fielder. He's got good miles still left on him. And I mean, he still hit, 30 home runs last year. Or more than that. I think he hit 40. Yeah. His batting average.
That's also one of the biggest ballparks in baseball.
He crushes the ball. And teammates love him. I was fortunate enough last year in the pandemic. I was apprised to this Dodgers Zoom call. So it was all of the Dodgers. It was a really cool thing to be a part of, and
like a fan call, like thing.
Yeah. It was a little more private than that. It was some of the coaches, that little league coaches and stuff were sent out this link, and it was pretty cool. Dave Roberts talked quite a bit, and
nice.
But the thing that I noticed about it was, I mean, Clayton Kershaw is definitely the guy in LA. Like, everybody loves that dude, and he could easily walk out of his job as a pitcher and take over with any job working as a coach for the Dodgers tomorrow.
Hey, I'm here. Just show up the next spring training. Yep. Where you want me.
and the one thing that he kept saying over and over again was how much Cody Bellinger was one of the most important, if not the most important part of that team. He was saying it in front of like all the people that were listening, and like Max Muncy's like, yep. And Like Mookie Betts is like, yep. And so there's got to be more to Cody.
There's something to the sauce.
Yeah. I've heard lots of good things about Cody as a man. And I feel like, he would fit in well with the group we've got. He's kind of likes having fun. He's kind of a bit of a loose
So let's
cannon.
just dive into that then.
Yeah.
Because that was next on the agenda. See, Cody Bellinger, question marks. So on that note, segue points for you, Mr. Lyons.
Thank you.
So on that note, Cody Bellinger has had one of the most interesting baseball careers of any baseball player over the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years. He's been up, he's been down. He saved my fantasy baseball team from mediocrity one year as he was the near MVP with Carlos Beltran. And honestly, one of the better Major League Baseball commercials over the last year with them two trying to one up each other for an MVP.
Yep.
Look it up. It's fun. To that point, I see where you're going, Jason, on the fact that he might be one of those dugout characters that would fit in very similar to what you were getting with Teoscar Hernandez and be able to take that other piece away, let him play center field. Okay, great. Yep. He might be only here on a 1-year deal to get his shit right, kind of like Marcus Semien did a couple of years ago. And honestly, if I'm sitting there looking at the free agent market from the Cody Bellinger perspective, American League East ballparks spell how I get my damn game back.
Yep.
So they are notoriously known for being the hardest hitting Major League Baseball division in baseball. And that's not necessarily because the hitting is that good or the pitching's that bad. On average, the metrics show that the American League East ballparks, and this is only been slightly skewed from the changes that happened in the Camden Yards, the Baltimore Orioles ballpark, with them pushing the fence back a little bit. It's been changed enough. They literally did that. And of course, the 1 year that probably could have helped them.
Yeah, for sure.
They were this close for those few runs. So you just took 100 runs off of the season.
When you compare Nimmo and Bellinger, they are almost deadlock the same. Like their stats are so similar, 1 year age difference. They're the same, basically
both left-handed.
Yeah, both left-handed. Only difference I'm seeing too is that I think Bellinger's about $10 million worth more than Nimmo.
So, but Nimmo's going to get a big raise.
That's what I'm going to say. Like afterwards, like he had a decent season, right? So how good of a season do you get to get a big qualifying offer then? So is it just like we were talking about Fast P episodes where it's like, you're up to your last year and the qualifying offer has to be really high if you want to stick around. Is that how it works?
Yeah, same kind of idea. That would have been the $19 million deal for one season for them to come back. It was 19 and some 19.7 some odd change or whatever the hell it was down the decimal / comma point. So, but to that point, I Nimmo's in the right direction in this argument where he can probably get a multi-year deal. Bellinger just had a rough year after having another rough year and then was an MVP runner-up the year before that. So
what happened to Bellinger in 20 and 21? Was this like massive injuries?
Yeah, it was head and hurt. I'd
say mind games as much as physical, but
yeah, he had the yips for a bit. And then every time he came out of the slump, he was just like a savage. He'd hit like 10 home runs in 11 games, and then he'd just go right back down into the toilet again.
Correct.
I think he was, I know he was definitely hurt 2 or 3 times within those, but again, I think you're right that he had a lot of trouble coming back. I feel like he was scared. He wanted to be that guy. And then it was nice to see him hit bombs this year. He only hit 210, I think, but he did hit a ton of home runs, and
210, 19 home runs and 504 at bats. So
crazy.
If you're talking about buying low on somebody, I'm actually very not even against this idea at all.
Yeah.
And to that point, fine. I'm ready here. I'll give you the year amount you want, but put up or shut up.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
The Blue Jays probably actually have the money to do that now that they freed up from Teoscar. You're talking they have about $14 million that they had committed to him last season. Probably we're looking at $16 million this year. If you give him the 19 for this one season and do a la Marcus Semien 2.0, you get a great outfielder. And this is where you turn around and figure out the center field piece to it. But he can play some center field. He's definitely no slouch. I will give you the fact that he definitely doesn't push Springer out of that equation as much as we talked about a minute ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But worst case scenario, he's a healthy designated hitter bat that could help this lineup.
Yeah.
Because
sorry, guys.
The other part of this equation is we're going to trade a catcher. So go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, sorry. So do you guys think for all this extra money we have open now, do we go all in on a big name, or do you think we might get a couple of names and just split it down the middle? I think. What do you guys think on that?
I think that there's a couple of big fish that if you land them, it changes the trajectory of what you are planning to do. Like the Giants are a perfect example of this. If they land Judge, that completely changes the trajectory of what they are trying to acquire, even though they have 3 or 4 spots they have to fill. The Dodgers are a different duck. If the Dodgers were to get Aaron Judge, they have lots of money and they have lots of need. So they're still going to be hunting for quality players out of that group. I think if you're looking at guys like Nimmo and Bellinger, and there's about, 7 or 8 others that are sort of in that same wheelhouse. I don't think you're altering the entire franchise with any of these guys. No. I think you're finding something good. You're maybe getting 2 or 3 good pieces. I often find that to be the best way to win. Sometimes you go for the big shot, and very rarely does it work. I mean, look, hockey and baseball are both really telltale. Like, look at Erik Karlsson in in San Jose right now. He's having the best year of one of the best defensemen who's ever played the game. And he's on he took a flyer. I think he's making like $1 million, and he's crushing it. Now, is somebody going to be dumb enough to offer him a deal going past this? I don't know. I mean, guys get on heaters and they want to make money. And for some guys, it works great, and others not so much. So
to that point, you were just mentioning money on Nimmo and whatnot. The salary ranges from everything I've been reading are all over the goddamn place. I can't give you a nice ballpark. It's because you have people like we were talking about based on the metric that he probably just had the best season of his major league career, and he's never going to have another one like that. And then you have people saying that maybe this is the new baseline, and it's everywhere, right? But the consensus in the industry is that he's going to get a 5-year deal.
Nimmo?
Yes, of some amount of money. So
and I think where Cody Bellinger's at, I think if you were to sign him and say, hey, you know what, Cody, we're either going to we'll do 2 years. I think that would be the maximum you could offer Cody Bellinger.
And to that point, I don't have a problem giving him the Robbie Ray deal.
Nope.
Get him a year to figure it out. And another year to crush it.
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe he'll figure it all out. If he's actually healthy, to your point, Jason, he could be one of the best hitters in the American League if he's in a Blue Jay uniform.
And he steals bases. He's fast enough to steal you bases. He's fast enough in the outfield that, like we said, that's a reduced risk for anyone else who's playing out there. It's easier for them. And I don't know. I feel like he's a turnkey, like a really good solution for what the Jays need. I don't know why it worries me a bit that people keep talking to him and nothing's happening. I would have thought by now somebody would have sniped him, but
so just because I want to be this person, you're not finding Nimmo?
Buzzing.
I've seen that one about 15 times, and I'm like, I gotta be the guy.
I love it.
I didn't want to name the episode after it because that would have been just too damn obvious.
That's a good one.
Anyways, but to that point, if I'm leaning in your direction, Jason, if I'm looking at this on paper as a soul calculating baseball numbers guy, the least risk is if you had to pick between the two anyways, the least risk
who else
is going after Cody Bellinger. Well, the problem is you mentioned on the free agent line, you dive into the Kevin Kiermaier bin really damn quickly after these two.
Yeah, or, I guess Jock Peterson isn't a bad... he's so unathletic, though.
Yeah.
Gallo is terrible. Paul,
but there's no shift this year.
Yeah. And Benintendi, it's...
Benintendi got hurt right when the Yankees needed him at most.
Yeah.
It does. I can't trust Andrew Benintendi. And
I feel like as a Red Sox and being traded to where he might have done that on purpose a bit.
Well, part of that, I know that I had read that the Blue Jays actually tried to get Andrew Benintendi at the trade deadline with Merrifield, and he refused to do the vaccination thing.
Wow.
Okay.
That was like I said, I read it. It wasn't exactly the best of sources, but usually these things kind of tend to have truth to it in some nature of it. Okay, if he wasn't ready to dive into a pennant race, but then he just decided to go or do it with the Yankees anyway, but you know, he didn't have to do that next piece. And then about a week later, they lifted everything at the border anyways. So it's like, oh, good thing we had that conversation. So, but to that point, there's something about Benintendi's game has always irked me, and I don't know what it is. I've never been able to put my finger on it. It wasn't just the uniform he was wearing, and I just don't know how comfortable I am with him being in the team. Where Bellinger, I think he's the fit because, like I said, it's a low risk. He's really, at the end of the day, let's say you do give him that 1-year deal, or, you know, Boris being his agent talks us into the second year. Okay, great. It's money for 2 years, and we're going to get something out of him. I can't guarantee it's going to be anything super amazing, but there is that chance that he could be an MVP again.
Yep.
He's 27.
Still young.
Exactly.
Still young.
He was 24, I think, when he had that crazy season where he hit like 40 home runs and stuff like that. So it's only 2-3 years removed from that.
Yep.
It's not distant memory, and good ball players tend to do good things. And the biggest thing for him is that year that he almost won the MVP, mind you, he was still a pull hitter then.
Yep.
Shifts were still a thing.
Yeah, shift comes out this year, right?
Yes.
So the shift is gone for this coming season? It was only just to test it one season?
No, they did. So the shifting thing has been slowly getting crazier and crazier over the last few years, Ken. And it's this next coming year, it's being abolished to some nature. They haven't come out and full on said what the new rules are yet, but the essence of the ruling that they're going toward is that position players will have anchoring around the position they're supposed to play. They're only allowed to go so many feet, meters, whatever, in each direction. So if that's the case, you might get a shortstop playing up the middle, but it's only one guy playing up the middle, you know, with the center fielder. It's not drastically shifting all 9 players over into one side to get somebody like Benintendi out. So it frees up some space for somebody like him that makes hard contact with line drives to actually land the ball in doubles territory instead of gloves.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my personal belief if I'm sitting there looking at those two on paper. Either any of you two want to chime in on the Nimmo versus Bellinger conversation, which has been really circulating and getting its paces around Blue Jays Twitter of late.
It's a tough one to call, right? Because you said their stats are very similar. I mean, if you go with Bellinger, he could have that MVP-like season, where I find there's Nimmo's been very, at least somewhat kind of consistent with what he's kind of going for. So he might be, quote unquote, the safer choice. Because if for some reason Bellinger doesn't hit his stride, and like you said, if he's off for a few games for whatever reason, he has that, it takes him that way to get back into it again, right? So, but when he hits the ball, he hits it a mile. So I don't know what you want to do. It depends on how we want to future plan this thing. Are we going to try to win the World Series next year? Well, I mean, Seattle says they're supposed to win, right? Apparently, according to that expert. So do we want to give it to
what
him?
The guru says? Take this shit.
Do we want to give it do you want to go all in for a year, or do we want to stretch it out for at least 2-3 years to see what the project is like?
So here's the other fun wrinkle to your point, Ken, and I think this might help with the decision on that whole thing. Let's say you throw 5 years at Nimmo right now, and it's for a sizable chunk of money. It's probably, let's just say for the sake of argument, it's somewhere pushing 20 or around 20. I don't think he gets that at the end of the day, but just for our sake of argument with this conversation. Now you have that money locked up in your outfield. You have Kevin Gausman locked up. You have George Springer for another 5 years. You see the dollar signs starting to add up?
Yep.
Somewhere I have to spread money in there to pay Vlad, Kirk, or Jansen. Then I have to find room for Bo Bichette.
Yeah.
And then we're going to also eventually have more guys coming into that equation too. Alek Manoah, I'm sorry to say, is going to get probably the biggest payday of any Blue Jays pitcher in history.
Oh yeah.
Just saying.
I don't want to jump on, and I like Nelson. Nelson put a great comment in the chat. If you guys can see it, he's right. He's right on Conforto. I mean, that guy's making $500,000 right now.
Look at that. Nelson's back.
Yeah. Stop, Nelson. But I wanted to, as an aside, did anyone else read the article or see the episode the guy from the Raptors, the cooking show.
Serge Ibaka?
Yeah, Serge Ibaka's cooking show, where Manoah said the biggest cheater in baseball history is Alek Manoah. Oh no, sorry, is
that was
Garrett
the other
Cole.
way. Garrett Cole saying it was cheating.
Yeah, Manoah said that
Make sure he
Cole-
comes by the Audi side if he's saying that.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, that
Too
is
much
going to
sticky
make
stuff.
for a serious battle next year, wherever when the Jays are playing the Yankees.
Yeah,
it'll
just
be
remember this: Aaron Judge ain't going to be there to hold the big dumb Cole back next time.
yeah.
So it's going to be that interesting. But to that point, that's not the worst idea in the world. Honestly, Conforto's in that same kind of ballpark of
for sure.
he would fit this lineup really well. He's a hell of a gamer. Obviously, never got healthy enough even to stick last year, even after a few teams did audition him. I want to say, actually, it might have been the Seattle Mariners that were actually going to sign him, and then he failed a physical or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there you go. There's why you go after Teoscar Hernandez if you're the Mariners, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So that makes sense. But to that point, that's two good bats that the Blue Jays could get there, both left-handed bats.
Yep.
And balance around and do something what they would. Now they don't have Ramal Tapia, who was non-tendered the other day.
Yep,
So he's technically a free agent. The Blue Jays could, yes, sign him over again. But if they turn around, honestly, that's an upgrade. You have somebody like Conforto to be your fourth outfielder. He can play both corners. You use Springer and Bellinger to be your swings in the center field. There is a nice little roulette you can get going there with four guys and have some good pop and get that balance between DH, fourth outfielder, so on and so forth. Still get Vladdy a day randomly to DH and so on.
I think
there's some good things there. But great insight, Nelson.
Couple of guys that can play outfield for the Jays right now. Like, I don't mind Whit Merrifield out there. I don't mind. There's a few guys that if you get into a jam and Vladdy needs a day off or whatever the case may be, you can throw a guy out there and they'll do a good job. But I do think that
and to be even that person, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., we actually saw play a solid first base before he got hurt too. So there's some all over pieces that they have to play within the toolbox there.
I feel like baseball is going in that direction where you're going to see guys who are a little bit more Swiss Army knife, which is great.
Athletic.
Yeah, which is great for kids that are coming up because, I mean, if you sign with the Yankees and the Yankees sign Rizzo to a 10-year deal and you're the kid that's playing first base for their farm team, you're never going up unless he gets hit by a bus. And I mean, you don't want to wish ill will, but stories.
Knock on desk, fuck.
I've heard so many stories about players who have just about made it in baseball, and because of their positioning, they have to pivot. And in some cases, they can be successful. I mean, look at Josh Donaldson. Josh Donaldson was a catcher when he came up.
Yeah, really.
And case in point, Blue Jay history. Carlos Delgado was a catcher.
Yes.
True. I remember that.
1993 World Series champion, Carlos Delgado, catcher.
Yep. And it's the ability for somebody, like a guy like even a guy like Cody Bellinger. He can play one. I mean, he's a left-hand throwing.
Yep, he did that before too.
Yeah, he's tall. He's a good athlete, and so you've got to be able to start to use some of these assets that you have, in different ways. I feel like for the sole sake of being able to, guys need more rest. Like, I mean, I was never a big proponent of what the Golden State Warriors or some of the NBA teams that'll sit their entire starting lineup. I mean, fans are paying top dollar to go see the game. Throw Curry out there for a little bit. Throw somebody out there for a little bit. You can't have them doing nothing. But that being said, it is one thing that if you do have the dog days and you want to get some guys some rest, you've got to have some guys where you can throw them in wherever you feel like.
But yeah, if you're going to throw your eggs into a basket like Cody Bellinger, the Michael Conforto thing almost looks too freaking similar. I knew it was pretty damn close to Nelson's point here to lump them together in this comment here and get us talking on this tangent, which is great, by the way. And Blue Jays fans, you got any more insight out there, please let us know. We hear you on all social media and everything right to our feed here. Apparently Jason's the only one watching it though. So anyway,
what's a message board? What are you talking about?
What? We have a message board? I'm so used to not having it. We got all these new toys. In 2020, obviously that was the shortened season. Conforto batted .322 with 9 home runs and 31 RBIs. Couldn't quite put that the whole together over 125 games the next season, but doubled the home run total, similar in the RBIs still regardless. There's something to that, especially when you're looking for an extra fourth outfielder, a guy that can come in and spell everybody and just be maybe a presence off the bench.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a good spot there for the former 10th round overall first pick in 2014. So that's Michael Conforto. We got a lot of first round draft picks in this free agency market this year. Bellinger, some of the other guys we were chatting about, and including, this is where I get the segue points. Okay. The other guy I want to talk about, because there's this wonderful thing going on in Blue Jays land that our buddies over at Jays Journal were talking about this week. And there is some really good lineups for trades between the Cardinals and the Toronto Blue Jays. So we can swap some birds around here, not flipping any. So maybe that's post-trade. But the Cardinals just lost probably one of the best career catchers in all Major League Baseball history in Yandy Molina. They are now vacant and don't have a great substitution for that going on behind the dish for a very good young pitching staff that is going to also boast getting Jack Flaherty back this season, who was projecting to get derailed this season as being one of the Cy Young candidates before last season. So there's a lot going on in St. Louis there for this to be a good position for them to be diving in for a catcher. And to say the free agent market's a little lacking is being nice. Outside of Wilson Contreras, of the former Cubs alumni here now, there's not a ton of great catching. The Blue Jays, meanwhile, have, as we've talked about on this show ad nauseum, we have 3 amazing catchers. And they're going to be looking for the most major league ready of them all, because they want to win this year. They're not looking at somebody like Gabriel Moreno and going, yeah, that's the guy I'm going to have for my future. They're looking solely at Jansen and Kirk.
Yeah.
And to anchor a pitching staff, this is no offense to Kirk, when you're looking at those two verbatim on paper, you have somebody in Danny Jansen that has a proven track record of being a solid backstop. The offense has finally come in, where you have the flip of that with Alejandro Kirk, where he, until this year, was more bat than anything. So I have a strange feeling that there are going to be some phone wires burning up between the St. Louis Cardinals and the Toronto Blue Jays. But now you're probably wondering, who the hell is Craig talking about getting back in return, though?
I was about to ask you that, Craig.
Well, let me tell you, Mr. Ken. They have a little bit of an embarrassment of riches in outfielders. I don't think they're going to trade their best outfielder in Tyler O'Neill to us. But in all reality, on paper, straight up for one of our solid catchers, maybe with a throw-in sweetener minor league guy, not a far ask. And then you look at, I think it's, I forget his name. It's the guy that's got Lombor. I forget it. But the guy I'm looking at is Dylan Carson's center fielder.
I like him.
Plus defensive skills. Was a guy that crushed the ball throughout the whole minor leagues. And I believe I think he did 1 year of college before he went into the major league draft. Something like that. So anyway, former first round draft pick in 2016 for the St. Louis Cardinals. He's went through that whole system, and he's had a little bit of trouble adjusting with the bat at the major league level. He's shown enough that there's plenty going on in the right directions there, but he hasn't been able to put it together in like a crazy cliff like he did in the minor leagues. It sounds a lot like the bat of Danny Jansen.
Right.
To me. Right. So maybe we have that next piece to take his game over the top, and we have the asset that the Cardinals need in return. Gentlemen, what do you think?
So you thinking we would get if we give either Jansen or Kirk, and it sounds like you're saying we give them Kirk, we can get Carlson and a minor leaguer. Is that what you're saying? Craig?
I'm thinking we would probably have to. I think we can get Carlson for one of our catchers straight up. If not, like I said, maybe we have to give them that last little bit because we're getting a guy that's usually catchers aren't just as highly valued as a center fielder. Usually your best athletes on the field are your center fielder and your shortstop. Mm-hmm. That would be where the arguing point would be.
For me, I mean, if you're doing it, then I think that the big thing with that is, you know, we know we're going to lose one. I feel like Jano is the right loss. Whether I'm right or not in this, I feel like
I agree with you because I love Kirk,
and I feel like Danny Jansen's trade value is quite high right now. He calls a great game. He has had very few pass balls in his career. He's an excellent defensive catcher, and that's what they would be walking away from, is one of the best defensive catchers to ever play.
And they're getting some of the offense from early Yandy back.
Yeah, and I mean, the Cardinals are a pretty hard-hitting team anyways. Like, I mean, if they can slash a good right-handed bat in there, and then if they can get a lefty from something else, I know that it's funny when you look up the prospective teams looking at Bellinger and all those guys, they're all the same. It's the Jays, the Cardinals,
it's basically any good free agent, insert Blue Jays.
Right, exactly.
Blue Jays.
The Blue Jays are in the hunt. I mean,
just like in the Anthopoulos years, we were always in the hunt, just couldn't close.
I feel like Jano's the one to go. I feel like Jansen's the right trade to make if they're going to make it. And I mean, you just, with that one, you kind of got to roll the dice. You have no idea what's going to happen with those guys. I mean, I know that Carlson is a pretty solid baseball player. But again, I've just looked at some of his stats. He's, he has a decent average. He's got decent stats, but not great stats.
That next piece hasn't been taken yet.
Yeah, he doesn't hit a lot of home runs.
We can unlock, but he's always played solid defense in the center field.
Yeah, he's young.
That is my piece.
Young, he is young.
Big dude.
He is young.
Yeah.
So this could be a breakout season if we do actually decide to trade, 1-to-1, right? So it's either we're going to be expecting between 8 to 18 home runs out of him and all that sort of stuff, but you never know. He could have a breakout, maybe hit 20, 25. You never know, right?
To me, he spells one of those guys that regular season from him, he's kind of pushing 260, 270 like he did in his 2021 season. But in the Blue Jays lineup, that could be 20 home runs in the American League versus the National League Central pretty easily.
Yep.
In our lineup, that could be the amount of doubles he could pepper in the ballpark. That could be 100 RBI season if he's batting between like Springer, then him, then Vlad and Bo, and you know what I mean? Because he's got the legs to be able to do it up at that top part of the lineup.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is he hasn't hit in a very good position with the Cards. So he's been at the bottom of the order. So you're getting the best pitches thrown with no threat on either side of you. They're not worried about the guy behind you. So
the Cardinals hadn't discovered that whole let's put our best guy in the first spot.
Yeah.
So him getting that flip turn around the lineup wasn't helping him. He had to do it himself.
No. I'd love to get O'Neill.
He would be my guy I would scream to get, but I doubt if you're looking at that outfield, they're not building on Dylan Carson's anymore. They're building on Tyler O'Neill.
Right.
So, which is it just shows you how fickle that baseball is.
Hey guys, let me ask you guys a question. And sorry, so for all the players we've talked about, have any of them shown any interest in coming to Toronto?
Out of the free agents, I will give you no news is not real to me.
Right.
The Blue Jays can be as interested as anybody else, but
that's what I'm kind of curious.
You haven't heard about any of them taking a trip to go see the stadium or anything like that.
Yeah,
or meet with them down at the Player Development Center in Florida. And I'm sorry, I'm done cutting you off.
Yeah, no problem. It's just because I want to know, like, all right, so we have all these potential options here, and do we go in on any of them? But the question is too, do they want to play in Toronto? Are they open to the idea of it? Right. So I guess no news is kind of good news, right? Because if they blatantly said, I don't want to play in Toronto, then just push him aside, right? Because unfortunately we've made some mistakes. Not just, I think I'm just thinking of like hockey and basketball where we've tried to pull players in where they really didn't want to play here and they just didn't perform. And if we're even if we're going to spend even just a little bit of money, I want to make sure that we're getting a good return on our investment of people who actually want to play in Toronto and they're excited to see the team that we have they're putting on the field. So, I guess no news is good news.
Yeah.
The Blue Jays' current brand is the best marketing ploy, by the way, ever, I think, because you have everything going for this team that you possibly can have going for it. You don't sell tickets right now. They're just giving them away, right? So
I also feel like baseball is a bit of a different, like there certainly is some want to go theirs, like there are some guys that do, like they do want to go somewhere. Like back to Cody Bellinger, he wanted to go, he wants to stay in LA. He can't. So, I mean, it's, I think that you get some guys who are, who go and I don't know. I mean, Toronto's a good city. Most of them have been there.
Bellinger's definitely been there.
Yeah. And so you probably don't get too many guys in this day and age that are saying, I don't want to go there. I mean, money's green on both sides of the border. I mean, I know that there's, some guys don't love playing in Canadian cities, but I feel like that's kind of, gone now. Like, it's just, I think that it speaks more to the guys they know on the team and stuff like that. Like you almost see guys staying together in small little groups rather than, sort of being more concerned about a city. And coaches, I guess, much play into it too, because, I know that baseball is a game where you spend a lot of time with your coach. And so I would think if it was me and I was a free agent, that would be something certainly that I would be putting, as a large consideration is who is the coach? How does he, what is he like with the players? Like, what am I going to be, what's my job going to be? And so I don't know.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you. But Ken, you look like you had something else on your mind.
No, that's all I wanted to know. Just because, like, I don't want this to turn this into back in the old days back in hockey when Eric Lindros did not want to play for the Quebec Nordiques, so he gets drafted and he's just holding a hat, not even putting it on.
Hey, Jim Kelly didn't want to play for Buffalo either. Just saying.
Really, Kelly didn't want to play.
That is one of the best stories in sports, by the way. If you ever want to look up something, Steve Francis.
Jeez.
If you haven't watched it, the Four Falls of Buffalo was one of those 30 for 30.
It's a
documentaries about the Super Bowl years for the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, Toronto Blue Jays. The Buffalo Bills, where they lost all four of those Super Bowls in a row. I lived through that. And the beginning of that, Ken, was the fact that they got the quarterback in the draft that they wanted. And he goes, no, I'm never going to play a game in Buffalo. And that was Jim Kelly. He played 2 years, 3 years in the what was nicknamed the Donald Trump Football League that failed. Just saying. And then he was all of a sudden a free agent and didn't have anywhere to play after that league went under.
Yep.
And Ralph Wilson and the Bills just talked him into it. And he goes, come up here, give it a try. I promise if you don't like it, you can leave. I'll let you go. He ended up falling in love, and he still lives in Buffalo to this day in the 6 feet of snow I fucking told you about earlier. So just saying, the community of Buffalo swallowed him in, just like how any Toronto Blue Jays fan will immediately jump on any good person that jumps and joins this team. And I do feel that is actually a genuinely known fact throughout Major League Baseball players at this point. They see how passionate our fans are. They see that we have random jerks like this that aren't even getting paid to do shows and talk all off season about it. So there's something to that. And I think it does sell it to the point where they will come. And hey, we got George Springer here. We got Ryu here. We've gotten all the big fish over the last few years, or at least one of them.
Yep. I think this next week is telltale. Next week is super telltale as to where these guys are going to land. We're going to start to see the landscape change. I mean, Judge is the first. Judge has got to land. So as soon as Judge lands, then everyone can stop, talking about it, and we can move on to regular stuff. I'm hoping that Bellinger gets an offer before that. I'm hoping it's with the Jays, but there's key cogs that need to fall first. And then we may have to do a midweek show if that happens, because that'd be about 5, be about 10 signings a second.
Yeah. If we ever get this not slow drip thing where, like, obviously this past week where we had only the Teoscar Hernandez news, if we get 2 rapid fire things in a row, we are going to have those. Oh, by the way, we're having a show episode, or we're going to dive on Twitter and do one of the Spaces events and talk to all the Blue Jays fans, which we're going to do again soon in the very new future anyways, and get some feedback directly with Blue Jays fans. But on that note, gentlemen, that is my agenda for this evening. So unless either of you have a topic you would like to talk about, some random Blue Jay shenanigans, anything in either of your ballparks that you would like to chit-chat.
I don't think anything aside from outside of the point, go Argos, since we just won the Grey Cup just a few days ago.
There was a new champion in Toronto this week.
Yep, so Toronto does win something.
I don't know how to say
Grey
this.
Cups.
I don't know how to say this without offending a whole bunch of people, but I was actually.
But anyway, I say this offensive thing.
I was actually. I woke up Sunday morning and my mother sent me a text and said, "Are you having a Grey Cup party?" And I said, "The Grey Cup's on today."
What's the Grey?
I mean, it's kind of cool that the quarterback from the Lions is going to get a sniff down in the NFL. He's a very talented athlete. Yep. I mean, we were very lucky to have him. But I mean, it's so interesting to see how the majority of my generation just does not gravitate to the CFL at all. Like, I mean, it's strange. In fact, like, I'll get offered Lions tickets all the time. And I mean, it's, I barely ever go. And when I do go, I find the value good. Like the football good.
Yeah, we actually went, my wife and I went, I believe a few months ago to a game against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And it was I think they were trying to get more people back into BMO Field because, I think it was for all healthcare workers. My wife was there and she won tickets and we went, and this is where I got all the stuff, right? So I was like, go to a game, buy some merch, right? And it was actually very exciting. Right?
I thought you were just trying to be my old co-host, Brendan Panikar, who has season tickets and clearly had a good time the other day. Shout out.
No, it's really good. The only thing missing was the snow, because apparently I like seeing sometimes the Grey Cup games in snow. But did you guys know what the average salary of a rookie in the CFL?
I guess it's not as much as a Major League Baseball minimum.
35,000?
70K Canadian.
Ouch.
35,000 US.
Maybe 35,000 US. But the funny thing is, it goes up by a lot, though, right? It goes up by a lot once they hit year 3. And I can't remember. It goes, I think, to 6 figures of Canadian. So I'm like, good. But so you got to survive those first 2 seasons. And apparently all first 2, like rookies and second years, all make that same base salary in the CFL, regardless of the team. Yeah. But their goal is to just last long enough to make it to third, where you actually get a little bit more money. But it would be nice if they had more money out there, but I don't know if they need more teams, better marketing, because the game itself seems fine.
We have the demographic here. I'm sorry to say, I'm the outside looking in, as I have the Buffalo Bills, like I said, an hour away. But to that point, Jason just said that he's just old enough that he's never got really into it, but enjoys watching it when he happens to be there and goes. Yep. Ken, you being that little, like we have all 3 main core age demographics on this show now between the 3 of us, Jason, then me, then Ken. So maybe in that little bit of difference there is, that the fact that they have made that ground up.
Yeah.
And they're getting back to, making that much more marketable, but that's just how things roll sometimes. And maybe that means more salaries in the future if they continue on that trend.
I almost feel like there would be some benefit in the CFL teams affiliating themselves with NFL teams, like whether
like a feeder system kind of thing.
Yeah, or it doesn't even necessarily have to be that. Even if it was just like if the Argos were marketed with a group that was like the Jets, the Giants, the Bills, you know what I mean?
I see what you mean. Like having like an NFL partner, not an affiliate.
Yes, and so like maybe 2 times a year, Josh Allen comes up and
hangs with the Argos.
In his Argos gear and or whatever the case may be. But I feel like they marketed really well to kids this year. They really tried to get like sort of the 11 to 15-year-old kids out this year by giving away free tickets. But I don't think they do a good enough job in retaining those kids because I mean what do I watch on Sundays? I watch the NFL. I don't watch the CFL.
Yeah. Well,
and
I don't know what you mean about my gambling addiction going on my phone. And
well, apparently too. I mean, I think
Fancy
there was.
football.
I think Dwayne The Rock Johnson was trying to do some type of partnership with the XFL and the CFL, and that didn't go through. And I was thinking, man, that would have been an interesting opportunity for. They're trying to build both leagues up, and I think because it seems like it's NFL or nothing. And even if you're like a really top level player, but you just don't have enough to make that, I don't know how many man roster it's in the NFL.
Because I made the joke earlier, I have to say this. Donald Trump tried to compete with the NFL back when, and he failed. Just saying.
Yeah.
There it is.
We'll
I said it twice. I'm done.
That's it. That's it for me, though, Craig. I can't think of anything else. Unless Jason, you have anything else to add?
No, I'm just excited to. I'm excited to see where some of these Ducks land, and it always fires me up. Like one of my sons is a huge Dodgers fan, and so he's had a real rough week this week with them just dropping guys,
bleeding everybody.
We're not going to sign guys, and so the team that he's sort of spent the last 6 years with knowing and loving is now about to just be exploded. And so he's seeing his first sort of example of why it's hard to be a fan for a team for a long time. Cody Bellinger is his favorite player. My son Jet is a lefty, throws left, plays first, plays the outfield.
There you go.
He is. We call him Little Belly. And the funny thing about it is I said to him, I'm like, will you switch to being a Jays fan if he gets traded there? And he's like, yes. So, I mean, I feel like, there's lots of, there's tons of stuff that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. And I'm just excited that we can, we can sort of talk about it. To be
that person, fandom always comes around. I was a diehard Roberto Alomar fan, so I was always a Blue Jays fan. But when he was, like you said it on this show a few times, Jason, you follow your favorites. And usually it's a player that's your favorite as well, not just your team that you're infatuated with. There was a little stint where I was rooting for the Baltimore Orioles. There was a little stint that I was rooting for the Cleveland Indians. There's a little bit there. But to that point, I never lost my core faith of, being, in the Church of Blue Jays fandom here. But there was always that person to root for, especially it was pretty easy to root for the Orioles those few years when he was in that uniform because we were pretty damn bad outside of Roger Clemens and Pat Henkin. Just saying. But anyways, Blue Jays fans, it's another wonderful week here on Jaybird Watching. It has been myself, Craig Borden, Ken Alfred, Jason Lyons, bringing you your podcast pleasure fun here all week, every week. And make sure you join us on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you get your social media from at BirdwatchingGC, because I'll tell you that story at some other time on why the hell it's not Jaybird Watching instead. But to that point, also listen in on YouTube, anywhere you get your live streams from, and anywhere you get your actual podcasts from, Spotify, iTunes, all the good fun stuff. So until the typical fellas, ready to sign off and get on till next Tuesday at 7:00. All right. 1, 2, 3. Woo! Let's go.
Thank you
Blue
for listening
Jays.
to the Jaybird Watching Podcast. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch at BirdwatchingGC and our YouTube channel. If you want to support the show and get extra content, please consider joining to our Patreon at patreon.com/birdwatchinggc. Go Jays, go.